In 1938, the fear that the United States is heading into a recession even before the Depression is over seems to be coming true. Unemployment has jumped 2% to 19% of the workforce. Times are better than they were in the depths of the Depression, but it seems that the movement to prosperity is faltering. President Roosevelt now has two great problems to deal with: the slowing economy in America and the tense situation in Europe. He appeals to Hitler and Mussolini to settle their European problems peacefully. But Britain's Prime Minister Neville Chamberlain goes much further than appealing to the dictators. Following this policy of appeasement, Britain and France signed the Munich Pact. It allows Germany, which has already annexed Austria, to partition Czechoslovakia and annex part of it. Chamberlain is certain that this has averted a war, and he announces peace in our time. Germany extends its policy on the Jews to all of its new territories, and persecution mounts. Roosevelt recalls his ambassador back from Germany, and Hitler responds by recalling his ambassador. While the Spanish Civil War grows bloodier, Japan advances in China. The world is on the brink of disaster. This and much more is the year 1938. Let's watch.
We're in the money. The skies are sunny. Old man depression, you are through, you done us wrong. We never see a headline about a bread line today. And when we see the landlord, we could look that guy right in the eye. We're in the money. Come on, my honey. Let's spend it, lend it, send it, rolling along. We're in the money. The skies are sunny. Old man depression, you are through, you done us wrong. We never see a headline about a bread.
Rose Bowl, 1938. Minutes to go in the first half. With a simple delayed end run that fools Alabama, California goes over for a score. Alabama's famed passing prowess is missing today. Bert Mosley throws plenty, but few of them click. Chapman snares this one for California. The speedy Alabama backs do a little pass interception themselves. Voltari's pass is taken by Cochran, the Tide's alert quarter, to turn the tide of the battle once again. After failing to gain against the powerhouse California line, Mosley tries the air again. And again, the pass is snared by California. Voltari this time. And just to rub it in on the Alabama passers, Voltari hurls a peach to Chapman, good for 25 yards. The third period touchdown parade of the Golden Bears sees Chapman. Inconsistent ground-gaining rushes. Too much power for Alabama. And finally, Voltari goes over for a second California touchdown on the very same play that fooled him the first time. California is avenged. And how?
In spite of the determination of this nation for peace, it has become clear that acts and policies of nations in other parts of the world have far-reaching effects not only upon their immediate neighbors, but also on us. I am thankful that I can tell you that our nation is at peace. I am as anxious just as anxious as any banker or industrialist or businessman or investor or economist that the budget of the United States government be brought into balance as quickly as possible. But I lay down certain conditions which seem reasonable and which I believe all should accept. The first condition is that we continue the policy of not permitting any needy American who can and is willing to work to starve because the federal government does not provide the work.
Experts at the infantry school have figured out a new gadget, a belly-whopping machine gun carrier with foot controls and everything for its four-cylinder motor. It's something like a midget creeper tank developed by other armies, and it's supposed to replace an entire machine gun squad, men, mules, and carts. It's called the Howie Carrier, from Captain Robert G. Howie, who designed it to give machine gunners a light motor vehicle capable of dashing around practically unseen through the tall grass. But they'll certainly have to wear stomach pads when the going's rough. Austria is a nation no longer. Despite the plea of Chancellor Schuschnigg for an independent country, German threats and a massing of troops forced him out, and the Nazis took complete control and soon declared Austria a part of Germany. The Austrian army left its frontiers and went under German command, and German troops by the thousands moved into Austria to make the annexation complete in a military and political coup that has startled the world. Czechoslovakia fears a similar fate, but Czech battalions are on the move, and the formidable army says no to Germany. All eyes are on Mussolini, but the Rome-Berlin axis is still intact. Now, for the first time in years, Italian and German troops are face-to-face at Brenner Pass. Premier Schotamps resigns in the face of the French financial crisis, plus the Middle Europe situation, and Leon Blum again is called and forms a new Popular Front government. Prime Minister Chamberlain is faced with dark days ahead, and so is Foreign Secretary Halifax. Will England stand again with France? The might of Russia is mobilizing, it is reported, and Russian leaders vow that Soviet guns and planes will guarantee the freedom and independence of Czechoslovakia. What of America in this old world turmoil? Senator Joseph C. O'Mahony of Wyoming has an answer.
Whatever our opinions or sympathies with respect to Austria may be, I think that Americans can best serve now.
Who are these women with their fashion shows anyway? It's about time the mere male stepped in with an advance review of his own. And here it is. This? Oh yes, a typical student, correctly attired for strenuous studies, or something. And plaids are the thing in top coats, I'm told. And for formal summer wear, may stylists suggest this double-breasted jacket? And for Wall Street wear, these outfits, and a pocket full of money. Jai Alai, one of the oldest of ball games, is taking winter residents at Miami by storm. Supervised by the Racing Commission, there is parimutuel betting at the Biscayne Fronton, and the players go on the court at varying odds, just as horses to the post. The baskets are scoops to catch the hard, lively ball and fling it back at the wall. When a team misses a point, they retire to the end of the line to await their next turn in the field, while the team winning the point continues. The pair first scoring 6 points wins, paying off at the betting windows. You bet your money, and you take your chances. 1938 promises big things for baseball, and Clark Griffith and manager Bucky Harris see big things in the air for the Senators. Pitcher Wes Farrell is getting into shape with Ricky Farrell. DeShong shows great promise in early workouts and is being relied upon to bolster the Senators' firing squad. And they may fire when they are ready. Anytime now. The Boston Red Sox aren't going to waste any time getting into that big league season. Pitchers and catchers warm up, with catcher Morris Berg working as backstop for spring heaves by Lefty Grove. The American Leaguers have worked out the kinks in the Southern Sun, and they're rapidly rounding into shape. Home run expert Jimmy Fox limbers up his batting arm by pulling him out. And in the Garden, Joe Bosmick stands up under a rain of fly balls. Even manager Joe Cronin seems anxious for the season to start. The KFC games, and oops! Day takes an awful spill in the 60-yard high hurdles, but Alan Talmick races on to set a new world's indoor record. The 60-yard dash, in which Herbert Thompson sets Ben Johnson down for the first time this season, but has to equal the record to do it. William Harding of Yale tops the bar at 13 feet 9 to take first honors in pole vaulting. But the crowd's waiting for the Columbian Mile, and here it is, another battle of the giants. San Romani pulled a muscle near the start and drops out, but the old master's still in there. Cunningham and Bensky, too, out to set new records for the howling crowd of 16,000. Uh-oh, Cunningham is moving out. He's put on the steam, and the fleet-footed Kansas is soon yards ahead. He's pounding his way to a new world's indoor record of 4 minutes, 7 4/10 seconds, and his 13th straight victory this season. The Toronto Skating Club and the Granite Club are cooperating in a monster 31st annual ice carnival. Mass fantasy and the delicate evolutions of Louise Bertram and Stuart Rayburn hold the rapt attention of a crowd estimated at 16,000 persons. The bands combined to supply the music for the festival required the services of 2 separate conductors. Sophisticated rhythm with all the whirls and turns and precision of a well-trained dance group, dancing on a solid stage instead of slippery ice. It's a spectacle jammed with color and dexterity. China carries the war to Japan. A dozen big Chinese bombers twice raided 3 cities on the island of Formosa, spreading death and terror among the inhabitants of the former Chinese possession. At least 12 persons were killed and a score of others wounded. Pools of blood occupy the attention of Japanese soldiery, who examine the damages with amazement that China could have struck back in the home territory of her foe. Madam Chiang, wife of President Chiang Kai-shek, speaks out.
I am speaking to you just as the echoes of exploding bombs have died down. Death comes from the clear blue sky, just as it has come to thousands of our innocent people throughout the length and breadth of our land.
Remarkable results are being obtained at the Navy Air School at Pensacola. A school on wings where young college men, naval flying cadets, are taught to fly. In a thorough training course, the instructor sits in front and signals his command. A little bumpy, but he gets his golden wings and the ducking that goes with them. Easter's just around the corner, judging from the crop of Easter eggs a-rolling from the candy factories. And fancy chocolate bunnies, too, to gladden the hearts of youngsters far and wide on Easter morning. Easter's almost as big a day in a candy maker's life as Christmas, with Brer Rabbit as the kitty's springtime Santa Claus. Moved from Dayton piece by piece, the home and the bicycle shop where the Wrights built the first airplane is dedicated. Many who helped the Wrights are here with Orville Wright, including those who assisted at the original flight at Kitty Hawk. Now the shop will form a permanent part of Henry Ford's historical village, a shrine to the two men who made and flew the first airplane and made the world a smaller place to live in. The world's most exclusive dance floor, just outside a window of the LaSalle Hotel, 20 stories above the street. They're Benny and Betty Fox, brother and sister of Oak Park, Illinois, just showing how brave they are, or something. And now for a little fancy work. But look for yourself. I'd rather not. When it comes to high stepping, this breaks all records. But I wish they'd go home. Due to open next February, the San Francisco Fair is progressing right on schedule. On a man-made island of 400 acres in the bay, some of the exhibition buildings are nearly completed, and the show is beginning to look more like the $50 million it will cost. The heroic statuary will interpret the theme of the fair, recreation. When the exposition closes, the new man-made island will become an airport, one of the most modern terminals in the country. A new type of glider is tried out by Bob Morse, California gliding ace. A one-man power hanging type with the pilot supplying his own takeoff power. It's really a modern refinement of the earliest gliders, in which the pilot's legs hung free and were shifted about to change direction. He doesn't go very high, but what a thrill it must be to skim down a long, steep hill and land right side up. Mexico proposes to pay American, British, and Dutch interest for oil properties recently taken from them by the nation. And her citizens gather by the thousands to help raise the $400 million needed. Even the youngsters smash earthen banks and turn over the coins, while aged farm women offer chickens and other livestock. There's lots of gold and jewels, too, donated by richer citizens to a national redemption fund, started to pay off the foreign oil companies. It's a striking demonstration of nationwide cooperation. The baseball season officially opens as President Roosevelt throws out the first ball in Griffith Stadium, Washington. And in no time at all, Alameda, first man up for the Senators, smacks a two-bagger to put the Philadelphia Athletics on the defensive right in the first inning. After Lewis walks, Wright hits Kelly, the A's pitcher, for a single, scoring the first run of the game and of the season. Then Bonura singles, and the hit brings in Lewis. Before the inning is over, Myers socks a long one that goes for a triple, bringing in Wright and another runner. The Senators are certainly putting on a hometown show for the president today. But the A's have their moments, too. There's Johnson belting out a triple with two men on base in the third inning. The play scores Finney and Werba with Johnson pulling up at third. But watch for the wild throw to home on this one. There it is, and Johnson is able to dash home from third. His run ties up the score. But joy in the Philadelphia camp doesn't last long, for in the fourth, Lewis whams a homer, bringing in 2 men ahead of him for Washington. The game is in the bag, but the hits and runs go on and on. Final score, Washington 12, Philadelphia 8. Baseball is here. Holding the combined forces of the New York Fire and Police Departments at bay, a 25-year-old youth stands on a ledge 17 floors up, threatening suicide. While thousands watch, safely behind police lines, his sister pleads with young John Ward for 11 hours to come back to their hotel room. Any move to haul him in the window was met with threats to jump, and the family refused to let the police make any attempts during the afternoon. As the hours wore on, police rigged a field phone from the ground to talk to him. Still of no avail. Polite yet firm, Ward said he was making up his mind while newspapermen kept vigil with police and firemen on this unprecedented assignment. Fire net's useless. With nightfall, a cargo net is run up and strung beneath the ledge. Then, just as rescue attempts seem successful, there's a cry from the street. And oh! The tragedy that shocked New York. A horrible ending.
Very great annoyance, which often occurs in eating, occurs at the breakfast table. No matter how good you feel when you get up in the morning, if you come down to the breakfast table and happen to tackle a particularly vicious grapefruit, and in eating it, you get squirted in the eye, your whole day is spoiled. You're quite likely to go to the office, swear at the stenographer, and goodness sakes, anything can happen. The whole day is ruined. But if you wear my patented breakfast cap, you can overcome that annoyance. All you have to do is pull down the protective screen which is provided, and then you can eat a grapefruit without any trouble at all. Every home should have at least a half a dozen of these fine patented breakfast caps.
Fred B. Snight Jr., the boy in the iron lung, has been fitted out with a $15,000 trailer in which he now can be taken about the countryside to get a breath of fresh air, as it were. By an ingenious arrangement fitted to the top of the trailer, a sort of periscope, he can see where he is with better visibility than the average motorist. Today, his outings to Arlington Park to see the races. And with his money down, he can watch his favorite drive by to win. Something new in bathing beauty contests, with only their lips showing through holes in a screen. It's a contest to pick the most kissable lips, so other charms are taboo. A little tough on the judges, it would seem, especially in a case like this. But don't obey that impulse. The winning peekaboo beauty turns out to be Helen Jane Widmer. I'll say... Gabby Hartnett signs and signs as new manager of the Chicago Cubs. Dizzy Dean joins in congratulating the veteran catcher who's seen plenty of action behind the plate for the Windy City Nationals. Former manager Charlie Grimm is tuning in on a new job, broadcasting Gabby's first games as new commander-in-chief. Gabby shows his boys how it's done, and they're in the running again, an inspired team, and now a pennant threat. Howard Hughes, millionaire sportsman and aviator, brings his famous Lockheed round-the-world plane into New York from Glendale, California, for another new flying record. This time, he's cut the flying time from coast to coast for transport-type planes to 10 1/2 hours. A most amazing young man. Douglas Wrong Way Corrigan drops in on Chicago in his famous $900 Clipper. He's not lost this time. He has a rendezvous with high Chicago officials, and later he is welcomed by the citizens of Chicago in a triumphant parade through the city streets. I'll bet Doug doesn't know where he's going right now, but he's certainly on his way. From the air as well as the ground, the Marines are on the warpath. But today, they're really stalking Old Man Want, for the battle show is for the benefit of the Navy Relief Fund. Tanks and machine guns add to a realistic picture as they advance on their theoretical enemy. This 6th Regiment was the one stationed in Shanghai at the outbreak of hostilities, so a sham battle should be tame to them. Who said it was a sham battle? They've cornered the enemy. He's on the run. The Marines have landed, and the situation is well in hand. Danielle Deroux did more than create a sensation in her American debut, for her hairdress in the movie has had a strong influence on fall styles. Danielle's coiffure was created by Joseph of the Helena Rubinstein Salon, and here he duplicates it. The hair is brushed upwards on the sides, caught in little ringlets, and voila, you have it! The Empress Eugenie style has staged a comeback too. Here's 1780, and Joseph uses silver sequins. For the younger set, this style after Rembrandt is recommended. All in all, this rage should affect fall hat styles. That is, if anything can affect Milady's hat. Martial law in the Sudetens. While Europe's leaders move and countermove in their diplomatic chess game of threats and ultimatums that lead the way to war or peace, the pawns in this great crisis, the people of the Sudetens, already know the dread terror of conflict. With his unofficial mission as mediator in the Czech crisis smothered by the growing tenseness, Viscount Runciman is called back to London to advise the British cabinet. High in the Bavarian Alps, Prime Minister Chamberlain of Great Britain arrives on his epical visit to Hitler's mountain chalet in a desperate effort to preserve the peace of Europe. A visit that startled the world. The Nazi leader greets his guest warmly, and thus began the series of conferences, first here and then at Godesberg, destined, no doubt, to decide the fate of millions. And here it was that Sudeten annexation to the Reich was first demanded. Back from his trip to Germany, Chamberlain is met by anxious thousands at Heston Airport. His bold venture has caught the public's fancy, but he bears stern tidings. Nazi demands that yet may lead to war. France and Britain gave in once, but new demands and ultimatums pave the way for general conflict. The entire world is on edge. The American legation in Prague is digging in. An immense concrete bomb-proof dugout rapidly is being made in the legation garden, in which Americans still in the Czechoslovakian capital can take refuge in case of air attacks. The appalling threat of war is very real in Prague. The Polish liner Batory brings to New York Nota Bene, brother of the Czechoslovakian president. He helped to organize the Czech Republic, and now he voices his country's stand.
If Germany will attack us, we are prepared. Our men are behind their guns, ready to fight to the last breath and to the last man.
62 starters are in England's premier cycle race in the Isle of Man Cup. Open to amateurs and professionals, this race brings out the fastest speed, the greatest thrills, and oftentimes the worst spills. It's Frank Berry, but he's not seriously injured. Not as bad as his cycle, at any rate. So, with a smile from Frank, the race goes on with Kenneth Bills leading the pack with an average of nearly 80 miles an hour. And when Bills gets the flags, the Isle of Man trophy is his. The final chapter in the National Tennis Championships. Here at Forest Hills today, a gallery of 12,000 fans are seeing Miss Alice Marble in the far court regain the crown she wore in 1936. And she does it so ruthlessly that Miss Nancy Wynn of Australia never gets started. It's a remarkable exhibition of sustained power under perfect control. Unable to get her weapons functioning because of Miss Marble's attack, Miss Wynn puts up a game fight, but a losing one. 6-love in the first set and 6-3 in the second, in the short time of 22 minutes. And now the coveted trophy. A famous doubles team separates for a thrilling last chapter in the men's singles. Don Budge in the far court and Gene Mako battle it out for the title. Mako's scorching forehand drives cause the lanky Budge some trouble, and he drops the second set 6-8, but he comes back to win in 4 sets. His victory earns him his 4th national title of the year. He's a one-man tennis monopoly. Miss Patty Berg of Minneapolis and Miss Estelle Page of North Carolina tee off in the Women's National Golf Tournament at the Westmoreland Country Club. The tiny redhead has tried 3 times before to capture the coveted crown, and today she's the queen of the links, despite some fancy putting by her opponent. Revenge and victory are hers today. It was Mrs. Page who dampened Patty's hopes last year at Memphis, but now she has room to spare and a putter that spells doom to her opponent. It's 6-5 in Patty's favor, and the trophy is hers. A big win for a little winner. The impressive armed might of Germany was poised for a new world war on that fateful day, September 29th, but a new spirit moved over the face of war-scarred Europe. These graphic scenes show the arrival of Mussolini at the epical 4-Power Peace Conference at Munich, inspired by Prime Minister Chamberlain of Great Britain, seen here entering the Führer House for the all-important meeting. Next, Hitler himself arrives with his entourage, his demands for the Sudetenland backed by German arms and tanks and planes. Then Premier Daladier of France, a somber little man on the strangest mission any French leader ever faced. And finally, Il Duce comes to the conference that is to decide the fate of Europe, a conference he himself did much to bring about. And there, for 9 critical hours, the 4 leaders and their aides parley over terms, while the entire world literally holds its breath. And with these signatures, as Hitler signs the famous agreement, along with Chamberlain and the others, a new era in world accord is promised. An era in which Italy, France, Germany, and Great Britain may jointly guarantee the peace of strife-torn Europe. History in the making. An end, perhaps, to national jealousies. A giant new wind tunnel built at the research laboratories of the National Advisory Committee for Aeronautics is disclosing principles of design otherwise obtained only by dangerous and costly test flights. The smoke stream there shows how the air flows past any type of wing section. When air flows smoothly over a wing, there is lift. But when the flow breaks away from the wing in a steep climb, lift is lost and the plane falls. By a newly discovered principle, suction is applied through slots in the wing, and the lifting airflow is restored. Another marvel, a model airplane under magnetic control actually is made to fly in a small free-flight tunnel, the only one of its kind in the world. An amazing device for scientific studies to make flying safer. 60,000 fans, great and small, jam the Yankee Stadium for the fourth game of the World Series. In the second inning, Bill Leah of the Cubs, with 2 men on, feeds Crosetti a 3-base ball that marks the beginning of the end. Gordon and Ruffing score. With 3 games in the bag, the Yanks can't lose. But in the 8th, Cavaretti revives Chicago hopes with a pretty double to right. The Yankee pitcher, Ruffing, gives O'Day just what he wants, and there goes a home run clout. Cavaretti romps home ahead of O'Day, whose surprise homer has put the Cubs almost even with the Yanks. The score now, 4-3. But the Yankee half of the 8th is the Cubs' Waterloo. The Yankees really go to town. Hoag's double brings in Lou Gehrig. Pitcher after pitcher is knocked out, and finally Dizzy Dean is rushed into the gap. But even Diz can't stop the Yanks. Crosetti's drive is good for 2 bases, bringing in Hoag and Gordon. Final score, 8-3, with the Yanks again world's champions. But the Cubs are not that bad, Mr. Mayor. The President and other high government officials put in a day inspecting new Army and Navy Air Corps equipment, including the Army's Great Flying Fortress and other up-to-date fighters at Bowling Field. Coming on the heels of the President's determination that the United States air defenses must be increased without delay, it looks as if something's in the air, all right. At the Naval Air Station at Anacostia, the President has a look at the Navy's amazing new $1 million bomber. And what a plane it is! Winter cruise fashions for the coming season have a new slant. This year, prominent stylists are stressing comfort first. There's no need to pity the poor sailor with a crew like this. The clothes are seaworthy in every way and as shipshape as the sailor lassies themselves. For instance, this new skirt-short combination. Slacks are just as popular, but then so are shorts. Ahoy there, lassies! Climb aboard the good ship Passion. Radio listeners were thrown into a frenzy of terror when they mistook a war drama for fact during a broadcast by Orson Welles. The mythical air invasion gave America a taste of war jitters.
I'm, of course, surprised that the H.G. Wells classic, which is the original for many fantasies about invasions by mythical monsters from the planet Mars. I'm extremely surprised to learn that a story which has become familiar to children through the medium of comic strips and many succeeding novels and adventure stories should have had such an immediate and profound effect upon radio listeners.
Ford has started a $34 million expansion plan, and Henry and Edsel are sure that things are looking up. So sure, in fact, that they've added a new medium-priced car to their line. It won't be long before the new cars will be roaming the highways. But not like that, I hope. Back from months of fighting in General Franco's nationalist army in Spain, 10,000 Italian legionnaires disembark at Naples. Happy, no doubt, to be back in their native land. Italy's proud of their record, as is their king, who reviews the homecoming battalions. The troops are only a part of those sent to fight in Spain, but it is expected that others will return soon. UCLA, Washington. A fumble by Adams is grabbed by Montgomery, and he's a round end for the Californians. A quick lateral to Kenny Washington, the big back, leads to the first score. Washington fights back with Mick Adams taking the ball for a pass, heaving one that looks good, but it's intercepted by Hershon of California. California is the underdog, but you'd never know it as Kenny Washington smashes through for 5 yards. To make it 13-0 for UCLA, Kenny Washington smashes over for his second touchdown. Severe denunciation of Nazi Germany by President Roosevelt quickly followed the terrible outbreak of rioting and destruction waged against Jews in Germany. As U.S. leaders condemn the Nazi persecutions, the president calls Ambassador Hugh Wilson home from the Reich.
Americans are and should be indignant at the terrible outbreak of Jewish persecution in Germany and the drive against Christian faiths as well. It represents an outbreak of brutal intolerance which has no parallel in modern history except possibly the destruction of religious worship in Russia by the Bolsheviks.
People are talking again about a new barbarian invasion of Europe. But this time there's a difference. The original Huns had always been barbarians, but the Nazis had been born in a civilized fatherland, a glorious old Germany, rich with spiritual and intellectual traditions, full of splendid universities and fine old churches. This fact makes the recent orgy of frightfulness a thing of very deep significance. For here we see another fall from grace. Here again we see the perfect flower of pride, love of self, pushed even to contempt for God.
We have every right to expect that there will arise a popular demand in the German Reich, not only for the cessation of these brutalities, but also for the punishment of those who have wildly turned themselves into legislatures, laws, courts, judges, and juries, and have visited unmerited punishment upon the innocent. A plea for the Jew is now a moral plea for ourselves. Humanity cannot afford to be silent.
Royal Air Force officers make ready for a try at the world's long-distance non-stop air record. And they make it too, 7,200 miles in 47 hours. At the Mother Cabrini High School, a Mass is celebrated simultaneously with the ceremony of beatification in Rome for the nun who died in 1917. Beatification is the first step in the ceremony of proclaiming a saint, and Mother Cabrini will be the first American elevated to sainthood. 2 miracles have been directly attributed to her intercession, and the Church requires 2 more after beatification before Mother Cabrini can be called a saint. The Kibitzer at last is officially recognized and comes into his own. It's the Sidewalk Superintendents Club, a covered observation post where passers-by can stop and watch. The excavation is for a new building in the Rockefeller Center Group, and the Sidewalk Superintendents have even been honored with their own shield and slogan. And if everything doesn't meet with their approval, they drop suggestions in a box. It's hot coffee this guy wants. The Kibitzers recognize the true artist, too. Technique like this rewarded with noisy approval. New York hockey fans get their first thrill of the winter as the New York Americans open the home season in a furious battle with the Boston Bruins. And the Americans draw first blood with a long, hard goal shot by Carr in the first period. The battle is even more intense in the second period as the belligerent Bruins try to tie up the score. Despite the fury of the Bruin attack, the New Yorkers increase their lead. Wow, the slaughter is terrific. This time, they're really on ice. In a desperate third-period drive, the Bruins finally score. A stunning silhouette's the thing this season for the girl who would be swanky. A different silhouette for each occasion. These new designs by Roger Smith, seen in the Rainbow Room at Rockefeller Center, show what is smart in evening wear. And it looks like a big evening, too. Milady, during the coming winter evenings, will have rings on her fingers and bells on her toes. That is, figuratively speaking. They are going all the way as to jewelry, brooches, earrings, and what have you. President Roosevelt, while asking for appropriations for relief of unemployment, points out that democracy has disappeared in many countries because of weak, confused government.
Democracy has disappeared in several other great nations, not because the people of those nations disliked democracy, but because they had grown tired of unemployment and insecurity, of government confusion, government weakness. Finally, in desperation, they chose to sacrifice liberty in the hope of getting something to eat. We in America know that our own democratic institutions can be preserved and made to work. But in order to preserve them, we need to act together, to meet the problems of the nation boldly, and to prove that the practical operation of democratic government is equal to the task of protecting the security of the people. History proves that dictatorships do not grow out of strong and successful governments, but out of weak and helpless ones. We are a rich nation. We can afford to pay for security and prosperity without having to sacrifice our liberties into the bargain.
Another 12 months of undeclared war in the Orient. By land and by air, the Japanese army carries fire and sword to the heart of China. Hankow falls, but in this cruel conflict, it's the helpless civilian non-combatants who suffer most. Delegations from 21 American nations met at the Pan American Parley at Lima, Peru, as Governor Landon warns dictators of America's solidarity against persecution and tyranny.
We reject the philosophy of these fascists, Nazis, and communist powers as alien to everything we prize and stand for, to our hopes and ideals for justice and tolerance.
Nationwide floods brought death and destruction in 1938. Here in California, hundreds perish and thousands are homeless as raging torrents sweep everything before them. Roads washed out, power disrupted, famine threatened as the relentless waters sweep on, leaving a staggering toll of misery and damage. A tropical hurricane lashes the eastern seaboard, the most destructive storm in North Atlantic history. Torrential rains and terrific winds cut a path of destruction and death across Long Island and New England that claims hundreds of lives and causes damage estimated in the billions of dollars. A tidal wave added to the fury of the storm, washing out homes and piling up ships on shore. It's nature at her worst, terrifying and destructive. "40 persons were killed outright and scores injured when the crack Olympian flyer plunged through a weakened bridge into the swollen waters of Saugus Creek, the worst railroad disaster of the year. Here at Midvale, 22 school children and the driver of their bus met sudden death when a fast freight struck the vehicle at a grade crossing. A horrible tragedy. In one of the most spectacular fires of the year, at the city service plant in Linden, millions of gallons of gasoline and oil go up in smoke. Employees miraculously escape death, but firemen fight the stubborn blaze for days. The McKessons and Robbins swindle, the scandal of the year, if not of the century. As wealthy F. Donald Custer shot himself, it was revealed that he and his brothers, under assumed names, all had amazing criminal records. Custer killed himself rather than face trial. "1938 saw the failure of President Roosevelt's famous purge. He asked voters to recall tidings without success, and another target of his campaign, Senator George of Georgia, was also reelected. Governor Lehman of New York was victorious by a very slim margin, defeating Thomas E. Dewey in a hotly contested fight. And New Dealer Frank Murphy of Michigan met defeat. After being marooned 8 long months on an Arctic ice floe, 4 Russian aviators and scientists were rescued by an icebreaker after heroic efforts to reach the floe before it could break up. Under the command of Ivan Popane, the marooned crew faced death many times before rescue. England successfully demonstrates the pick-a-back plane, an amazing aeronautical duo with tremendous possibilities for aviation of the future. 2 of these Royal Air Force bombers flew non-stop from Egypt to Australia, a distance of more than 7,000 miles, and a new world's long-distance flight record. The biggest debut in aviation circles was that of the new Boeing Clipper. In test flights, she went aloft with a 40-ton load of men, machine, and ballast. In oceanic service, she will carry 72 persons.
These have been some of the highlights of the year 1938. Appeasement has allowed German territorial expansion in Europe without firing a shot. But this expansion will prove too slow for Germany. 1939 will see Germany break out of its borders with lightning speed and engulf Europe in another great war.